Opportunity again to meet with the saints and to hear some very interesting history, Lord, of your creation and some of the possible answers for the things, Lord, quite frankly, that we wonder about. So, Father, I pray that you bless us. You'll bless Stan as he presents, and we ask for the presence of the Holy Spirit here as we talk about your beautiful creation. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Dave. Appreciate that. Good afternoon, everybody. Are you still awake? Did you have a good lunch? Did you get your nap in? Yep. Oh, not yet? You didn't get your walk down to, what is it, Springs? Yeah. Okay. Before I actually get into my talk with dragons and dinosaurs, as people are coming in still, I'm going to regale you with a story. And I don't know what regale means. I mean, were you galed before, and then this is a regale? I don't know. Anyway, I'll tell you about this. Now, can you see what this is? That is a little metal container having what appears to be rock inside of it. Let me tell you, I got to do one time something that every red-blooded American male wants to do once in their life. I got to play in lava. Whoa. How cool is that, guys, right? Is that cool? Guys? It is cool. It's cool. So anyway, so ladies, we went to the Big Island on our anniversary. Points for that, right? We went to the Big Island, and it was during one of the years of eruptions there at Kilauea, the vent, and I wanted to go over and see lava up close. In fact, and this is a national park, I know the rules, but nevertheless, I still bought one of these little metal containers because I wanted to collect a little bit of lava. I just wanted to go scoop a little bit up like that. It's brainy here, right? College educated. Okay, anyway, so we drive up to the edge to where the highway had been covered by lava from years before. Couldn't go any further. Again, this is in Volcanoes National Park. And so we pull up, park, come over to a little kiosk, a little tiny ranger station kiosk. And I asked the woman inside, she was a ranger, I asked her, is it okay if I go up to where the lava is coming out right now? Now, what did I expect her to say? Dumb tourist, you know. So, no, believe it or not, this is what she said. Why, sure, just be careful. It's right up there. Can you see that heat mirage? It's right. And she told me right where to go and everything. And I said, well, thank you very much. So off I went over seemed like hundreds of old lava flows, over and over. I picked up a big stick while I'm walking. And, of course, I'm carrying my metal thing because I'm just going to scoop a little bit of, okay. Anyway, so after it seemed like forever, I finally got up to where, sure enough, here it is oozing out of the side of this mountain. And did you ever hear that lava was hot? I could not get very close to the lava. Certainly not close enough to do a little scoop. And so I was about from here to the baptistry, okay? That was about it. And I'm thinking, okay, bright guy, how are you going to get over there? Incidentally, I totally get the fiery furnace story from Daniel. Totally get that. That's 2,000 degrees. That's 4 times your highest setting on your stove at home. So anyway, so I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Okay, so I know. I'll put this on a rock, empty, and I've got my long stick, and so I'm going to stick it in the lava, hoping some of it will stick to the stick. So I poke it in there, and it catches on fire, and it drops. Try it again, catches on fire, and it drops. Third time, catches on fire. Oh, there's a little bit, there's a little bit. Poke, jam it down in there, have my water bottle, and I pour it into this lava, and it goes, and there is my illegally collected piece of lava from a national park. Is that cool or what? Cool. Guys, cool? Anyway, and incidentally, yes, one time I thought I would feel the bottom of my shoes, and they were hot. So anyway, So one of these days, I'm going to break off a little piece of this lava and send it to a lab that dates lava, because lava is where they get millions of years. And I was there that technically this clock started ticking as to the age. And so I know how old it is. And I'd like to see how old they think it is at the lab. So one of these days I'm going to do that, although it's kind of expensive, but I'll do it someday. Anyway, that's my lava story. Cool? So I love volcanoes. I love lava. It's just so cool. But let's talk about dragons and dinosaurs, because that's really cool too. Your kids thought so. I was just over there and I rushed back over here. So here we go. Let's talk about dragons and dinosaurs. All right, here we go. Did you know the Bible talks about a dragon? You know that, right? Revelation. What does it say? It says that, so the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old called the devil and Satan, who deceives, who what? Deceives the whole world. Okay. Now the word dragon, when you think of the word dragon, what's the image that pops up into your mind? You're thinking something that's pointy and breathes fire and all that kind of stuff, right? Well, guess what? The original word dragon or dracon literally means big, large reptile, big lizard. That's what it means. All of this pointy, imagery like this is pretty much Middle Ages. And it kind of grew onto to the word as the years rolled by. But if you go back to the time that John wrote the book of Revelation, dragon simply meant big lizard. That's all it meant. Now that's important, because you'll see at the end of this talk why that's important. Okay, let's keep going. What did we think we were finding when we first found dinosaur fossils? What did people think about them? Because we have not always known about dinosaurs. You know that, right? In the early Middle Ages, we didn't know what dinosaurs were. We'd never really understood them to have existed. But this is what happened. This guy, and I tell kids, don't you want to be a scientist? Look at the hair. That's cool, isn't it? Anyway, 1676, this is the head of the chemistry department at Oxford University in England. And they found a bone and he wrote a paper on it. It was the first scientific paper written about a dinosaur bone. Problem is, he thought it was from an elephant from the days that the Romans were in Great Britain. Not a bad guess. He didn't know anything about dinosaurs. And so he was wrong. And I tell kids sometimes scientists are wrong. Well, here's a picture of a pastor. This is a pastor in Connecticut. And in the little town where he was, outside the town where he was pastoring, in the roadway, there was actually some footprints. He didn't know what they were. He thought they were from giant birds. He thought, boy, there used to be a whole bunch of ostriches in Connecticut. Who knew? Well, actually, they were dinosaur footprints. And this is what he saw. This has been cut out of the ground in the same formation there in New England. So he saw hundreds, and there's thousands of them, of these footprints of some unknown dinosaur. Incidentally, today, thousands of footprints, not a single bone. We don't know what it looked like, but some kind of velociraptor of some kind. So this is what they saw. And again, he thinks they're birds. And again, he was wrong, because sometimes, kids, pastors are wrong. But not very often, don't worry. Okay, so, and the point is this, the world had a hard time understanding what dinosaurs were, even as they were finding the bones. So, in the early 1800s, they found this tooth in England. Dr. Mantell, a physician, found this tooth and some other bones. He showed the tooth to some of his nerdy friends and said, does anybody know what kind of tooth this is? And one of them finally says, well, I'll tell you what it looks like, but it can't be that. Well, what does it look like? Well, it looks like an iguana lizard's tooth. Problem is, it's 20 times too big. And so, with that discovery and a few other bones, eventually they came up with the discovery of what's known as an iguana tooth dinosaur. And look at that picture. Isn't that a cool picture? That's a drawing, an early artist rendering. It's basically the first artist rendering of a dinosaur. And that's what they thought it must have looked like with the few bones they had. They found more bones since. It was probably more like that. But anyway, oh yes, and they did find a tooth of something they eventually called a megalosaurus, big tooth lizard. And again, look at that picture. It just kills me. It's kind of funny looking. Well, I'd like to point out to mixed groups, including secular groups, that it was a Christian who came up with the name dinosaur. This was a very famous British scientist. If you'd never heard of Charles Darwin, this would have been the most famous in England in the 1800s. He set up the British Museum. Richard Owen was an anatomist, and he came up with the word using dinos and sauros, which means awesome lizard. That's not a bad term. So, interesting. But what really I still have that picture, and I'm going to remove that quickly. Let's go to this. This is probably the guy that might be given credit for putting dinosaurs on the public map. He was a scientist in Philadelphia, and he had a museum in downtown Philadelphia, and he heard about just over the border in New Jersey, people were digging up some big bones. He got permission to get those bones and put them in his museum. He assembled them, and he came up with something like that. He called it a hadrosaur, 1868, put it on display, and that is the first skeleton of a dinosaur put on public display in the world. And nobody had ever seen anything like this. And don't you think this got lots of attention? And this being in Philadelphia, last time I checked, Philadelphia is in the United States. You know what that means? They could sell tickets. And so he sold tickets, and people came from miles around to take a look at this crazy thing. Incidentally, there was no skull bones, so he had to imagine a skull, and made it out of paper mache and put it on top. So anyway, put it on display in 1868. Now, other museums in America wanted to sell tickets, and so they said, well, we've got to get dinosaur bones for our museum, and suddenly they hired all kinds of people to go out and look for dinosaurs in such far-off places as Montana. So anyway, this is what the first dinosaur probably looked like in terms of size. It was found just over in New Jersey from Philadelphia. They have never found a single bone since in that deposit. Not a single dinosaur bone since. This is a freak discovery. But anyway, it put dinosaurs on the American map. So they hired people to go out and do every sort of legal and illegal thing to get bones to put in these museums, because the museums were paying top dollar because they wanted to sell tickets too. And it really did kind of speed things along in terms of discoveries. So here is another iguanodon they found in Belgium, I believe, in the 1890s. Put that on display. And then American dinosaurs, and let's face it, we got the good ones. We had the big guys, and those started making tours through Europe, like that's in the Louvre. That's a Brachiosaurus in the Louvre about the turn of the century. And so for the first 50, 60 years of dinosaur bone discoveries, the only kind of dinosaurs they were finding were vegetarian dinosaurs based on the teeth. Let me show you. So this is from a Camosaurus. I'll hold it closer so you can see back there. Sorry. But anyway, if you can see this, it is spoon-shaped. And spoon-shaped means it was vegetarian. Can you see the shape? So all the teeth of the dinosaurs, Triceratops, whatever they were finding, vegetarian, clearly, by the teeth. Then, well, we'll get to that in just a minute. So this is probably the big famous one that was in the New York Museum Natural History. And this was called a Brontosaurus, and they put it on display in 1905. That was such a sensational fossil that they had people coming from all around the world to look at it. And when they came, they started to notice something. They said, wow, this is a fat one. Look at this. Are you sure about the head? Turned out they had the wrong head on the body of that dinosaur. So it's basically two dinosaurs put together to make one. And they called it a brontosaurus. It was an apatosaurus body with a camarasaurus head, and called the whole thing a brontosaurus, which means, anybody know what brontosaurus means? It means thunder lizard. So you can imagine, boom, boom, as it's coming down the hallway. So brontosaurus. Now, to this day, if you want to get into a lively discussion with a dinosaur nerd, and they are out there, ask them this question. So, do you think that there is such a thing as a brontosaurus? Trust me, they'll have an opinion about it. They will. Okay, so behind the scene there at that museum in New York, they had this painting on the wall. And when people came in and looked at the dinosaur skeleton and looked at this painting, they imagined, what kind of world was it where these giant animals lived? What do you do with this? And incidentally, creationists were attacked, shall we say, by folks that were finding these things and say, okay, you Bible believers, where are these animals in the Bible? And so we didn't have immediately good answers. And sometimes we even had people who would say things like, I think the devil made those bones and put them in the ground, and stuff like that. And we've got better answers now, but those were some of the answers we had back then. So what kind of world was that? That was an amazing world. So the only thing about dinosaurs that seemed to make the news in those days, remember the teeth are vegetarian, is they're big. And they were huge. And so scary thing about them, don't get stepped on. They're like elephants, right? Just stay out of their way. That was the only thing that was scary. And then they found something. Then they found something with not vegetarian teeth. They found what? What did they find? They found the first T-Rex in a far-off state called Wyoming. Henry Osborn was a paleontologist, and he found it, and he called it Tyrannosaurus rex, which basically means mean king lizard, is what it means, as I tell kids. So, Tyrannosaurus rex, and this is my favorite T-Rex because he's smiling. So, T-Rex. This changed the world's view of dinosaurs overnight. And this is the first one put on display. And if you don't think that put a little fear, I mean, Hollywood was happy, but other than that, it really did change the image of dinosaurs. Now, I'll talk a little bit about T-Rexes for a minute because everybody wants to know about T-Rex. In fact, T-Rex bones are not particularly rare, but they make it very expensive because anybody who wants any dinosaur piece wants a T-Rex teeth, and it makes it expensive for us serious collectors. So don't you go shopping for T-Rex bones. You're making them too expensive. Okay, enough said. All right, that's my public service announcement. One thing we know about T-Rexes and what they ate. What do you think that was? Okay, what's that one up there called? Your kids know these by heart, every one of them. The Triceratops. In fact, some kids tell me my favorite dinosaur was a Triceratops. I said, man, you're cool. Anyway, how would we know that they ate those? Give me a hint as to how we might know that they really did eat Triceratops. Yes?
There were Triceratops bones in the T-Rex's bones.
That's exactly right. She said the right answer. This is what happened. We found a T-Rex skeleton, and some of the lunch was still in the stomach. And when they looked at those bits and pieces, they were clearly from a Triceratops. So very good. But you know what that doesn't tell us? That doesn't answer the famous old question about a T-Rex. Was it a predator or was it a scavenger? Because it could have eaten a dead Triceratops. So why would you even wonder that a T-Rex might not make a good predator? These little tiny arms here, how could it catch something and hold it, right? It doesn't look like, plus the other thing, frankly, is look at the size and heaviness of that body. That's a very heavy body. Doesn't look like it could run very fast. I like to guess that I'm thinking that hadrosaurs, which lived in the same neighborhood, T-Rex. They find the bones close to each other. Hadrosaurs could run 25 miles an hour. Well, how do we know that? Because T-Rex could run 24 miles an hour. Do I have to explain that one? That's not a good joke. Okay. T-Rex. Now take a look at that fossil picture on the right. See that little round thing there? What is that? That's a preservation of a T-Rex and a Triceratops skeleton together. Okay, and when they looked at the Triceratops, they found teeth marks on it. When they looked at the T-Rex, they found broken rib bones. Now, for those of you that caught my talk yesterday on the flood, remember the evidence is clear that the waters rose slowly and caught animals and eventually buried them in fairly close clusters, probably because of the limitations of high ground. Okay, anyway, the only explanation you can come up with as far as how can two animals that appear to have been fighting each other be caught and buried in a sedimentary rock in one place. And again, it just looks like they found some high ground, they got a little close to each other, and they started fighting, and the water caught them and buried them. So I can't think of any other explanation for that. Okay, so we have one or two T-Rex footprints that we're certain of. One's in New Mexico in a secret location, and that's the one that's pictured here. 9 inches deep, okay, pretty heavy animals. Now, the best T-Rex that was ever found for years was Stan, the T-Rex. Stan, seriously. And, and for years on display in Hill City, South Dakota, right in the Black Hills. You can see it downtown there. And that's where this tooth came from. That's a copy of Stan's tooth. So, did I show you this yet? The ones that were up here I did, but not the rest of you. Okay, this is a copy of a Stan's tooth. This much was the root. This much showed. You can tell it's a raptor because of the shape of the tooth. All raptor teeth are shaped like that, and there's lots of different kinds of raptors. Only T-Rex has got a fat tooth like that, real fat, thick. I'm telling you so you know what to look for when you're buying one. Okay? And to get a fat tooth like this, you got to have a fat wallet, trust me. But anyway, so that is Stan's tooth. But he was only 40% complete. 40% was the most complete one they'd ever found, until they found a dinosaur named Sue. Okay, Sue was found in 1990 in South Dakota, and Sue was 90% complete. Sue is a gorgeous thing, and guess where you can go to see it today? Museum of the Rockies, on display right now, a traveling exhibition. You get to see the world's most famous, and it's not even close to number 2. Yeah, it's an amazing, amazing skeleton. Incidentally, we call it Sue, and we call the other one Stan, and you might think we do that because we know genders. We do not know genders of dinosaurs. We know they laid eggs, but the pelvic area is not sufficiently different to be certain. So, how do they get the name Stan or Sue? Whoever discovered it is the one that gets it. So a woman named Sue, pardon me? They look different? No, they don't look different. They look very similar. So, no, they named it Sue because Sue found it in South Dakota, and Stan, whoever he was, had to be a very smart and dedicated scientist, I'm sure. Anyway, found Stan and named it that way. Incidentally, for years, we had seen them in the Museum of the Rockies, we saw Mike. Now, Mike apparently is not there right now, but Sue's taken over. So anyway, go take a look at Sue. I'm serious. Go look at Sue. They have quite a display there. All right, and there's a picture of Sue, incidentally, if you need a picture. And incidentally, is that Sue actually? Actually, no. That is a copy of Sue. Why? They don't often have the full real skeleton there. They will make copies of the bones. Incidentally, that's where they make their money, is by selling to other museums copies of the bones of the real dinosaur they've got. So it makes it affordable, sort of. You can get a copy of a T-Rex like that for probably $500,000. But that's way better than what Sue cost. She was $8 million. And that's a steal today at a zero. So anyway, and incidentally, Chicago, like Museum of the Rockies, is in the United States, which means they sell tickets. Okay, anyway, kind of interesting. So, but guess what, creationists? In 2005, scientists broke open a T-Rex femur to study the interior of the bone, and guess what they found? They found soft tissue. Hello? They found soft tissue. They found a vessel that could bend, and they found red blood cell stains. That is organic material. Every single study that we're aware of that evolutionists have done on the study of how long it takes for organic material to degrade and be gone out of a fossil is always thousands of years, never millions of years. And so why is there soft tissue still inside this T-Rex bone? They asked the woman who is in charge of that scientific group that did this study and who published her work. She said, well, there's one of two things. And this was a really good science statement. Here's good science. She said, either there are ways of preserving organic material that we have no concept of, or these bones are not as old as we thought. Now you know where we go. So anyway, thank you, the Lord, for using a T-Rex to open a whole new world of study. And now you can almost hear broken bones going in labs as they are looking for organic material in places they never thought it should still be. And I know that there's been dozens of examples of where they've found it, including one that's a little controversial where they think they found some DNA. That seems impossible. DNA is the first thing to break down. Anyway, okay, so I'm going to skip the footprint thing real quick. Let's do this. Did you know dinosaurs? We have skin impressions of dinosaurs. I got a little piece up here, and just to let you know, it is scales like a reptile. So if you ever think, I don't think dinosaurs were a reptile, well, we got skin that shows that apparently they were. Okay, but how about eggs? When I was a little kid and I'd heard about dinosaur eggs being found, my imagination was, boy, we must be talking about something roughly the size of like that, maybe a beetle-sized egg. Fact of the matter is, this is a dinosaur egg. And this is about as big as they get. They might get about 10% bigger than that, but think about an ostrich egg. It's very similar size, and that's as big as they got. And no, there's no bones of a little dinosaur inside here. In fact, 99.9% of the ones that they have found do not have bones inside of them. And I have theories on that. But anyway, this has been broken in and reset. But that's the size and shape of a dinosaur egg, which means that even the biggest ones started off very small, which is kind of interesting for a few issues, including ones like, were there any dinosaurs on the Ark? We'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so smaller than you might think. Okay, now, how many of you here, remember I already said that a real American male with any natural tendencies in their hearts would want to play in lava. Now I'm going to extend that whole subject to all of you. Who wouldn't want to dig up dinosaur bones? Wouldn't that be cool? Okay, yeah, it would be cool. And guess what? You can do it, although you missed this year. But anyway, next June, Southwestern Adventist University out of Keene, Texas, operates a dinosaur dig in northeastern Wyoming. For those of you who went to the Pathfinder Camporee at Gillette, many of you had a chance to go over to the dig, ride a bus over there and see it. This is the first year in about 8. We Hudsons didn't go. I feel bad about that. But if you go out there, it is a world-class dinosaur bone deposit. And it's on a ranch that a Christian family has owned for like 150 years or so. And they know about the bones. They wanted the bones to be studied by not evolutionists, but by creationists. And so because of that, providentially, God led Dr. Art Chadwick from Southwestern to make contact. And every June, they go with a bunch of volunteers, some from the university, some from places like Montana, who sign up and volunteer, and go for any 1 day to 30 days, any part of the month of June. And you can go and you will find dinosaur bones. The bad news is you probably won't be able to keep them, but you'll find them, and that is just very cool. So you'll go out to one of the quarries like this, and you will find things. This is my assistant's daughter, Lila, who found a nice scapula. There is a rib that I found, and there's me with darker and more hair, and I am digging up the rib of a hadrosaur. Now, I don't know if you can see in the picture. Can you see there's a little bottle there, right there? See that circle? There's a little squeegee bottle of something like super glue, very similar to super glue. And you squeeze it out on the bone, and the bone just sucks it right up, and it makes the bone super hard and easy to transport in one piece. And so before we wrap them up into metal foil and take them away, before they're removed from the place they were found, they will be GPSed with a ground locating sensor and put it right on the corner of those bones and record their position to a fraction of an inch. Then those bones will be taken out, photographed, and dropped in a computer program that looks like that. Now, this is cutting edge technology. This is literally taking the dirt away and showing the bones as they lay in relation to each other. Isn't that amazing? In fact, that's 3D. You can turn it on the side and see the beds graded, the big bones at the bottom and the small ones at the top. It's really cool. So they're doing great work there. Take a look at that picture and tell me what you don't see among the bones. What do you not see in the bones? You don't see skulls. Why? Yeah, crushed, because the skulls always have the thinnest bones. If you ever find it, if you're digging up dinosaurs and you find a skull, you have just paid for a college education for somebody, because that's where the money is. So first things to break are skulls. What else do you not see? What's that? Wishbone. Wishbone, okay. No jokes here. Leave the jokes to the professional.
The formation of the dinosaur.
Formation, how do you mean? What do you mean?
You don't see how it all fits together.
You don't see them connected. You don't see the bone. You don't see the leg bone to the hip bone kind of thing. So you're right. You do not see any. These are called disarticulated bones. How do you get a deposit like that? And this is buried in about 2 feet of, you would call it a mudstone, a sedimentary mudstone. How do you get that? Well, okay. Oops, that's not right. That shouldn't be there. Boop. Okay, we're going backwards now, aren't we? Let's go, forward. And I want to go back. Okay, there he is, Dr. Art Chadwick. So that guy on the left is the one that's in charge of the digs. He's sort of the senior scientist, Southwestern. Anyway, I asked him, have you done a survey of this area? Because I see the same layer across the canyon over there and so forth. Have you done a survey? Yes, we have. Is the bone density similar to wherever you look? Yes, it is similar all around. Oh my goodness. Have you done any number crunching? What are we looking at here? And he says, yeah, we're looking at the remains of between 10 and 20,000 hadrosaurs, which are giraffe-sized dinosaurs. 10 and 20,000 here. Now, the theory is this: wherever they died, water carried their bodies miles. And so far, in fact, rolled the bodies and so on, and maybe there was a little period which they could fall apart a little bit, but anyway, by the time they got to this location, they were completely disarticulated and buried in a kind of a depression, covered up with mud. What does that sound like to you? It sounds like one of the parts of the flood, right? So one of the events involving the flood, and so because of the work they're doing there, other dinosaur discoverers have commented on what they've published and said, you know what? I think some of our bones were also buried in some kind of a flood thing. Now they don't want to admit the Genesis flood, but they're more open to it being flood-involved destruction than they ever have been. So that's kind of cool that they do that work. So go to Southwestern Adventist University's website, swau.edu/dinodig, and you can sign up for next June. And there's a minimum fee that covers food, and you got to bring your RV or your tent because they don't have a motel there. Trust me, this is way out in the sticks, but very cool place to go. And you can dig up dinosaur bones. Incidentally, okay, so let me keep going here. Dinosaur to bird evolution. Did you know that whenever you go to Kentucky Fried Chicken, and now you don't because you're vegetarian, every one of you, but in case there's one of you that ever slips on this, and you go get a bucket of chicken, you're actually getting a bucket of dinosaurs. Did you know that? No, really. They think the dinosaurs evolved into birds. And I mean, they push that like you would not believe. Let me give you an example. One time I was reading a National Geographic article on T-Rexes. Now, National Geographic is the signs of the times for evolution. You know this? It's the signs of the times for evolution. It's an evangelistic thing meant for you poor ignorant Christians. You've just got to catch up with science. If you could only do that, you'd understand. So anyway, so there was this article on T-Rexes, and here's how they pushed the bird thing. The article is writing about this supposed mother T-Rex, and she was taking care of her chicks. Now, when was the last time you heard of a lizard having chicks? But a bird has chicks. So T-Rex babies are chicks in this article. It's kind of interesting. So talk about a little minor agenda. 2 theories on how birds evolved. One was they were once these guys. Now, what makes you think that might be a bad ancestor for a bird? I'm waiting for somebody to give the best answer. There's nothing right in this. Yes. Too large of bones. Well, yes, these tiny front legs have got to become far and away the longest limbs. You got to lose these little ones. You got to lose all this weight. It would be nice if you could develop hollow bones, feathers, cold-blooded. There's a few minor things to do. The second one, and they know there's a problem with that, so they have a second theory. One is called small crocodiles from the trees. That's their terminology. So small crocodiles supposedly climbed up trees, and there was food out there, and so it jumped out, got the food, ate the food, and made babies. Because that's what it's all about, making babies. The animal that makes the most babies wins in evolution. So, made babies. Okay, and you got to have food to have babies, so if you get food better than anybody else, you're going to make more babies. That's the idea. So, those crocodiles did better than the ones that couldn't jump. And then there are ones that somehow, luckily, had some kind of a skin flap between the legs, so they could sail like those flying squirrels. So it could fly a little further out and get more food than the ones that couldn't do that. And so they made babies, and the others, I guess, didn't. And so they won. And then the next ones grew wings and feathers. Any questions? Yes? How is it even possible? You don't understand science. I'm just kidding with you. Of course you do. And you understand the problem with that. And so there's a lot of issues to explain this, and yet they kind of feel, if I'm picking up the vibes, the kind of feeling is, oh, please, surely you understand that this is well established by science. Yeah, a little bit of that. So bumpy scales became feathers. Did you know where feathers came from? They came from bumps like that. That bump became a follicle that grew up from underneath the skin and became a feather. Okay? You want me to? Here, let me illustrate it. I'll be a little slower this time so you can pick it up a little bit better. Careful. Whoops, I did that wrong. So just, can you see the subtle difference between a bump and a follicle growing out from underneath? Oh well, anyway, so So that, okay, you can tell I know that you are the choir. I would not talk like this in front of a mixed group. So, and incidentally, what's kind of funny about this is that, of course you know about Archaeopteryx, right? Let me just say this. Flying dinosaurs are not the ones that became birds. You would think that would be a couple of the hurdles basically covered already. No, it was the walking dinosaurs that became birds. Okay, well there's two basic families of dinosaurs, ones with hips that look like lizards and ones that have hips that look like birds. This is called Saurischian and Ornithian. Ornithian, that's easy for me to say. So, which do you think became a bird? A lizard hip or a bird hip? The lizard hip ones became birds. So it's okay. All right, let's keep going. You get it. Some problems. Now, how about dinosaurs by evolution to their types? Because there's lots of fossils beneath dinosaur fossils. We should be able to find pre-T-Rexes below T-Rexes, or pre-anythings below their famous dinosaurs, right? So here's the thing. This is far left, that's a picture of an imaginary Triassic level ancestors to all dinosaurs. Then there's 10 types here on this. There's the imagined connections they must have had by the fossil record. Okay, let's take a look and see. What are we finding? Well, we're not finding anything that appears to be the ancestor of any dinosaur. And that's kind of a problem. And if you think I'm making that up, let's take a look at this. Is a dinosaur expert on the subject of evolution, and he says, for my reading of the fossil record of dinosaurs, no direct ancestors have been discovered for any species. He says, alas, my list of dinosaurian ancestors is an empty one. So, in other words, the dinosaurs are just like any other animal in the fossil record. They were not there, and then suddenly they are there. And there's no evolution. There's nothing coming up into a dinosaur. Even though you think a dinosaur, you think evolution. And yet, evolution of dinosaurs is a very tough subject. Okay, so when you think about dinosaurs, you think about size. They got 130 feet long, the big guys, and many, many, many tons. And yet, guess what? Some of them were pretty small, as in the size of chickens. What? Chicken-sized dinosaurs. Okay, now no reference to birds. No reference to birds there, yeah. Chicken size. So, okay. I know that we don't look at movies, but I've seen a trailer. Yeah, there you go. I've seen a trailer of the Jurassic movies, okay? And in those trailers, they occasionally show tiny dinosaurs like that. That is the only thing I think they get right in the movies. But anyway, there were tiny dinosaurs. So here's a good trivia question. What's the difference between a dinosaur and a regular lizard? Does anybody know? Regular reptile. You have all the answers. What?
Dinosaurs are bigger.
No.
They eat meat, while lizards are smaller and eat flies.
You had a good guess there, but I already gave you a hint that you didn't pick up, and that is it's not the size. Because remember, some were the size of chickens. So, and some lizards are even bigger than chickens. Komodo dragons, alligators, yeah, I mean, those reptiles are bigger. So what do you suppose it is? Come on, someone take a guess. Back there, speak up.
How many legs?
It's what? The knees, you're close. It's basically the hips. The hips on out to the knees, you're right. In other words, here it is, and this, you can wow your friends with your trivia knowledge. A lizard has lizard hips. Lizard hips that put the legs go straight out, and then at the knee they go down. And so they kind of get around like this, not very well. Whether dinosaurs have hips that put the legs straight down. Whether it's 2 legs or 4 legs, they got the body well off of the ground. And that's technically the difference. Pastor Stan, does any dinosaurs exist in the world today? The answer is not that we have seen. Apparently not, all gone. So I'm going to skip this. Yeah. Does the Bible tell us anything about dinosaurs? Remember, it's a fairly new word. So when it's talking about any animals, do any of them sort of sound like a dinosaur? Here's a couple of possibilities. One is this animal. You never hear them talk about this. So God created great sea creatures, tananim in Hebrew. And that word for the rest of the Old Testament almost always is talking about reptiles. So God created great sea reptiles? Well, I don't know. You can I'll just leave that for you to decide. But how about the behemoth? Now, no, I am not going to talk about Leviathan. We'll be here all day. But behemoth is interesting, and I think behemoth is my favorite possibility. Look now at the behemoth. Incidentally, Job, the last few chapters of Job, must read. You got to read. It's the longest part of the Bible where God is speaking nonstop. And right there, that's interesting to me. And what's he talking about? His creation. And he's basically, can I put it this way in human terms? He's bragging. No, Job, have you seen this? Have you seen this? Have you seen this? And basically, by what you see, can you not tell I know what I'm doing is God? But anyway, it's cool. And he says, look now at the behemoth. The Hebrew word for behemoth basically means beast. So no big, it's almost like it should be capitalized practically, which I made along with you. He eats grass like an ox. Yay, he's vegan. Okay, see now his strength is in his hips. His power is in his stomach muscles. He moves his tail like a cedar. His bones are like beams of bronze. His ribs like bars of iron. Are you getting the image of a powerful animal here? Very powerful. He is the first of the ways of God. And that phrase I really wanted to understand. So I studied that out. And Hebrew scholars agree that this is not talking about chronology. It's not talking about the first animal and then other animals were made. This is talking about an animal that stands first place among all the animals. It's a position statement. Most amazing animal ever kind of thing. And so I'm thinking, all right, what is this animal going to be? And so I got the kind of Bible that's got tiny print at the bottom of the page that says, scholars think the behemoth was a, what do you think?
Dinosaur.
You're not going to believe it. Hippopotamus. Now, I don't know about you. Are you overwhelmed by the amazing hippopotamus? Not the king of the beasts, not an alpha type animal. No, I don't. It doesn't do too much for me. Besides, notice that statement about he moves his tail like a cedar. Okay, do you see that? Whoops, let me go. He moves his tail like the cedar. Have you ever seen the tail of a hippopotamus? Doesn't evoke images of a mighty cedar tree. Okay? And cedar tree is the largest tree in the Middle East. So this has got to be an amazing animal. And so, as you can probably guess, the subject being what it is, there is a hippopotamus in Job for scale. Might God be talking about this as the most amazing animal he ever made? And that might be a closer representation. Incidentally, I'm not the only one that thinks behemoth is talking about what's called a sauropod dinosaur, a big four-legged guy like that. Might be. Now, incidentally, I've got the Ellen White quotes coming up. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. So, do we believe in evolution at all? What does evolution mean? Give me a translation. Change. Do we believe any animals changed? We're creationists, do we? Yeah, we do. We believe that something happened to the snake. Isn't that right? So when God cursed the snake, this animal, God basically said, you are no longer going to be able to tempt Eve. She's not going to run toward you. She's going to run away from you when she sees you. All your beauty, all your attractiveness is going to be removed from you. And you are now going to be on your belly and on the dust. You're going to eat dust, basically. So, notice that it says all cattle are affected by sin. All. So, all animals. What caused the flood? The earth was corrupt before God and the earth was filled with violence. I talked about this yesterday. Notice that it says all flesh. So God looked upon the earth. Indeed, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And God said to me, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. This is a very inclusive statement. All flesh, all flesh. The animal kingdom was out of control like the human kingdom was. And so God targets the animal kingdom as well. He could have done something just to the people if that was the only problem he had. The animals were also notice all flesh were corrupt, all flesh were filled with violence. So, take a look at some of these dinosaurs. There's a couple of dinosaurs that, for the life of me, I cannot figure out that they waddled out of the Garden of Eden. To me, take a look at the ankylosaur at the top there. That ankylosaur looks like a tank on 4 legs. It had bony protrusions. It had spikes on its back. It had a club for a tail. It had an armored head. I mean, take a look at it. That is not something that I could imagine walked out of the Garden of Eden just like that. Take a look at the others. They all have weapons as part of their body. I wonder about this. I wonder, is this the way God made them? Now, I'm going to come up on the amalgamation thing in just a minute. I'm going to show the quotes from Ellen White about this subject, and the question really might be, were these animals bred for some violent purpose? Were they bred to make warriors, to make them hunters, to make them entertaining in an arena or something? Is there some reason that they look like this? And, or was this just a natural development of the effect of sin on the animals? Incidentally, I just had to show you this. One theory, what happened to the dinosaurs? They were on the wrong boat. Okay. And the others weren't excited about them going to make it. So anyway, that's one thought. But okay, whoops. I'm surprised. I thought I removed these. Okay, let's go. Here's the question that I have for you, and we're going to wind this up here briefly. Did dinosaurs get on the ark? Did dinosaurs get on the ark? Now, at the North Pacific Union Conference, I've had 2 people come up to me, 2 workers there, say to me, Stan, when I was in school, we could not talk about dinosaurs. Isn't that sad? Couldn't talk about dinosaurs. Why? Because we weren't sure about where they came from. And Ellen White said things that we think she was talking about all dinosaurs, and so, the devil's behind all dinosaurs. There was kind of a negativity. And so there was that. And then you have somebody like Answers in Genesis come along, and they build a full-scale ark, and their thinking is, sure, dinosaurs were part of God's creation, and they got on the ark, and so on. And so you have all of this difference. Well, okay, how are we going to put this all together? And that's what I kind of want to do with you. Because what's interesting about dragon stories is that every corner of the planet has dragon stories. Now remember, what does the word dragon originally mean? Big lizard, right? Big reptile. Not necessarily fire-breathing pointy, which is the image we got now. But no, the word originally meant, in the days post-flood, they seem to be talking about big lizards. So we got lizard stories from all around the world. Now, here's the thing. China, England, and so forth. When you ask an evolutionist, why do you suppose we have these dragon stories around the world? We don't have any giant lion stories. We don't have any giant wolf stories. We don't have anything else that was big and scary in these stories. They're always consistently lizards. And I don't know about you, but my image of a lizard is a little, kind of scrawny, sort of pain in the neck thing. Honey, there's a lizard in the kitchen. Will you please come get it? Nothing scary. So you ask an evolutionist, he said, well, we think they probably found these big bones and imagined, I said, where would you get a lizard from that? Where would you get a lizard from a leg size like this? Why not, if you're in Europe and you find a giant bone, why wouldn't you think there must have been giant wolves here at some time? Something scary that was, part of the animal kingdom around where you lived. Why imagine, but consistently, it's always lizards. So why? What do you think? Well, I think that all of these are based on the memories of man, ancient memories of man, stories where people could still remember when their big lizards were around. And what's interesting about these stories, almost every one of them has a couple of consistent parts. And that is, it's usually the last one in the story. There's never herds or flocks or a whole bunch of them or a family. It's like it's the last one. And often at the end of the stories, it's no longer with us. It's like the last one. So it's kind of interesting. Maybe it's the tail end of the existence of dinosaurs. Remember, average size of a dinosaur was the size of a large dog. The size in usually these stories is not house size, more like horse size. So did the medium to small dinosaurs get on the ark? Maybe. Pardon me? Okay, there you go. Well, that ends the discussion right there. So anyway, no, I'm going to show you a couple of things that Ellen White said. This is the last quote, no, second to last. The wolf and the lamb shall feed together, the lion shall eat straw like the ox. Okay, everything becomes vegetarian. Predators all become vegetarian. The nursing child shall play by the cobra's hole. What's a cobra? Friendly or dangerous? Okay. And the weaned child shall put his hand in a viper's den. What's that? Snake. Dangerous, friendly? Dangerous. Okay, but no longer. So whatever they were before sin, they will be restored to that original pre-sin perfection that God made in that perfect world, right? The whole reptile world will be restored, including the ones that people in the time that Isaiah lived knew only about cobras and vipers, and those were the scary ones. But even dinosaurs, I think, are restored. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain. Okay, final picture. So the great dragon was cast out, the serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. Chapter 14. No, it's chapter 12. It's just in front of chapter 13. Very good. Which is right in front of 14. Excellent. Okay, 14 has the three angels' messages. Worship God who created. Prior, chapter 12, 13 goes right into the last day events, so where we are today. There's a flow. And the devil is deceiving the world and then needs to be undeceived by the three angels' messages. And we were created. And so the devil would like us to think you are not created. You are an accident of nature. You are animated pond scum. You just oozed out of a bubbling vat in something like Yellowstone has. That's your ancestry. You were not created in the image of a loving God. You are an accident of nature. And don't you know what? What is the image that he usually uses to push that? How about dinosaurs? Because when dinosaurs are put in front of people, what do people say? Dinosaurs, yeah, dinosaurs. Millions of years. Not the Bible. Am I right? So I think he uses the image of dinosaurs and dragons to trick the world into thinking that we were not made by God. And that's why we need to tell the world that we were made by God. And that's part of the everlasting gospel, incidentally. Part of the everlasting gospel in the context 12, 13, and 14, with the deception going out that you were not created, the world was not created. Part of the everlasting gospel is, guess what? Good news. You're not an accident. You got a future. God planned for you. So it's good news. It's part of the gospel. All right, now, having said all of that, I'm going to go to a quote that has really changed some people's ideas about dinosaurs. And this is the biggest one right here. Okay? But if there was one sin above another, that which called for the destruction of the race by the flood, it was the base crime of amalgamation of man and beast, which defaced the image of God and caused confusion everywhere. Now, a quick read of that has gotten some people to think, oh, she's talking about, amalgamation means mixing, right? It means mixing. Okay, it's usually used talking about alloys and metals, but any kind of mixing. And so, all right, she says if there's one sin among another for the destruction of the race by the flood, what was the triggering thing for God to send the flood? What was a triggering event? So I'm thinking, whoa, it's going to be in the Bible. So I turned around to Genesis 6, and it says this. Toward the beginning of that chapter, it says, the sons of God looked upon the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they married whoever they wanted to. Look at the next verse. God says, that's it, 120 years for man. That was it. God had had it. So, what was that about? Now, Ellen White explains that in other places a little clearer than here. What is the mixing? What is the mixing of man that caused the defacing of the image of God? It was the sons of God. Who are they? Please don't say angels. Some churches believe angels. It's the descendants of Seth. It's the godly lines, the ones that responded to God when God called, and they were followers of God. But who were the daughters of men? Okay, these were the descendants of Cain. These were the idolaters. Ellen White talks about they were idolaters. And the mixing, these guys following these women, followed them into idol worship, and the debasing that had caused the human race caused the losing of the face of God in humanity and led them down that. Now that was the one. But notice she talks about animals too and says cause confusion everywhere. There's other places where she talks about confused species, and let me get to that, and that's the next verse. So, incidentally, the Ellen White estate has said she was not talking about man with beast and separated it out from man. The amalgamation of beast caused confusion. The amalgamation of man defaced the image of God. Let's take a look and see if that's so. Okay, whoops. Next one. Oop, there, here it is. Okay, what does this say? It says, every species of animal which God had created were preserved in the ark. How many? Every species, okay? The confused species which God did not create. Oh, there's a line of animals that God did not create. And they were mixed. They were the result of amalgamation, were destroyed by the flood. Now, they were mixed. It doesn't sound like the animals decided to mix themselves. It sounds like they were mixed by people. And the violent people of the day. She's a cutie. Let her come up here and it'll get way better. She can take over. Okay, so amalgamation of animals. What kind of mixing would be of animals that would cause confused species, something God did not make? So may I direct you back to those dinosaurs that appear to be, shall I say, created or bred to be some kind of a warrior kind of animal, some kind of violent. To me, if I'm a violent-oriented, brilliant person living before the flood with a brain, many times my size, I doubt I would be interested in pushing the frontiers of science forward by experiments in labs, or something like that. I doubt that my motivation would be a very good and healthy one. Might I, if I'm into violence, say, what kind of pit bulls can I make these dinosaurs into? What kind of warriors can I make? And I'm thinking these might be the result in this. Remember, this caused a more violent world than otherwise was already there, and it got out of control, and God said, that's it, I can't let this go on. So, if you're getting the idea that what I'm saying is God made a line of dinosaurs that were fine and part of his creation. Some were made into new breeds, confused species that God did not create. God did not like that, increase the violence level in the world, and decided to not get any of those on the ark, but did some of those others get on the ark that were not affected by confusion? And I would say that those are the ones that became those dragon stories of late. Now, one other thing you need to see, and this I kind of think it seals the deal. She speaks of a large class of animals. There were a class of very large animals which perished at the flood. God knew that the strength of man would decrease, all right? And that these mammoth animals, that means giant, not mammoth fully woolly mammoths. These mammoth animals could not be controlled by feeble man. Remember, we were going to get smaller, and we did get smaller. And so animals like this, and she must be talking about animals bigger than an elephant, because we got elephants on the ark. So something bigger than an elephant. And that must be talking about these guys. And remember, these were vegetarian by their teeth. And so God said these are going to be too big for the people living after the flood. And so I'll let those perish. But they did not die because they were amalgamated. They died because they were too big. And you might ask a good question, why would God even make animals this size? And before the flood, almost every model I've ever seen about what the world looked like before the flood includes an atmosphere that was very pro-plant. And you could practically watch plants grow. And God would need giant hedge trimmers to take care of some of that. Anyway, and after the flood, would there be much vegetation around for a while for these things? No, food would be scarce. So anyway, now that is my thinking about these things. I'm going to stick to it unless some of you have a better explanation for this. This is where I risk all by asking for questions or comments or whatever. No, I don't need comments. No criticisms. No, I'm just kidding. Does that make sense, incidentally? Does some of this put together some of what Ellen White said about it? And you can see that just a quick read would make you think that maybe Ellen White was putting down all dinosaurs. But no, she wasn't. Yes? Yes.
Wouldn't that negate the possibility of cutting them open and looking for DNA?
Oh, yes, but not everybody does that. Just some dinosaur bone. Southwestern does for theirs. But not everybody. She said, if you put that squeegee hard stuff in bones, wouldn't that negate finding any soft tissue? Probably would. Probably. But let me think about that. No, I don't think so, because it was the outer layers only. That's all you were wondering about. We're talking about the insides. Good question, though. Yes? Well, it's the elevation. It's basically, it's on the northeastern corner. It's like the bottom of the foothills of the South Dakota foothills, Black Hills. I'm going to say 3,000 feet or so, something like that. Something like 3,000. Good question. Any other? And thank you. You got a mic. Here's somebody with a mic. Yes.
How can you tell that a dinosaur is a vegetarian? How can you tell the teeth are vegetarian?
Well, because here's a couple of teeth from a Spinosaurus. They are sharp, and we kind of compare to animals today. What's really interesting, though, is if you look at the teeth of a panda bears have sharp teeth. What do panda bears eat? Bamboo, only bamboo, 100% bamboo. So what the evolutionists say about an animal with sharp teeth, it is a vegetarian. They say it must have used to have been a predator. Now, I don't know about you, but can you see a panda bear trying to catch something as a predator? Anyway, yeah. So, good question, and just because it has sharp teeth may not necessarily mean it's a meat eater. Certainly not true in the case of a panda bear. Any other questions? Yes?
The chance of them cloning a dinosaur out of some
Well,
of this
just
soft
look at
tissue.
Jurassic Park. It's as easy as anything you could ever do in science. Jurassic Park, that's how they make their millions of dollars of making you think it's easy. No, the first thing that goes is DNA, and you need DNA to clone anything. But they're close to cloning a mammoth. And we may get a mammoth. And why would that be possible? Because mammoths are found frozen, and the DNA is in pretty good shape in those mammoths. And so Harvard is working on that, as a matter of fact. Anyway, and they're looking for a surrogate mother elephant that could bear a mammoth-looking baby. And it won't ever be exactly a mammoth, but it'll be an elephant that looks like a mammoth, basically. So anyway, but no DNA, I don't think so.
I
Yes.
believe the success of cloning an animal only depends to the will of God. If God will permit it for men to do that, it will
Yes.
happen. If God
Yes.
doesn't permit it, it's never going to happen.
You are definitely getting into areas that are crossing ethical grounds. I agree on that. But in terms of abilities, and actually they're recreating DNA in some animals. When I say recreating, that's an overstatement. You heard about these wolves that they have made that are somewhat cloned, kind of cloned, and they think they fixed the parts that were missing. I'm not quite sure all of what that's involved, but still what they got was an ancient wolf-looking modern wolf. So it's not quite the same as cloning it. Yes, here it comes.
In Washington State, there's a place called Blue Lake where rhinoceros parts were found. I actually went there.
Okay.
originally there were some real bones found in there and they were taken, but I've never heard of any dinosaur bones. They're
You
all
cannot-
just petrified. So there's no DNA, right? Or am I wrong?
First of all, DNA disappears within years. I mean, it's just a short time. So petrification doesn't matter. It's too late. So it's gone. They are finding dinosaur bones in Alaska, hadrosaurs, a species of hadrosaur, duck-billed dinosaur like these guys, that are smaller than these giraffe-sized ones. But nevertheless, you know what's interesting about them? They are not petrified. The bones are not petrified. They're fairly fresh feeling and seeming. And if you go to the University of Alaska in Fairbanks, they have a museum at the university there. And you go in there and they have a big display on these dinosaurs. And they talk very frankly about they're not petrified. Does anybody here have a friend in Alaska that I can get a piece of one of these bones? I so want to use them in my talks. But anyway, yes. Okay, over here.
Okay, I'm just wondering if I understand this right, but also I have a question. So if there was a large class of the animals that perished in the flood, the quote that you have
Yes.
up there, if that's, you're thinking the dinosaurs then that were the herbivores, the ones that were vegetarian?
Well, no, the big ones. Some of the small ones are vegetarian too.
Oh, okay.
I mean, triceratops are vegetarian. Yeah, no, a lot of the animals were vegetarian. Actually, raptors are a small percentage. They just get more press.
Okay. I was just wondering, like, if it was some of the big ones that ate, weren't carnivores,
Yeah.
they wouldn't really be a threat to us though, right? So why would we need to control them?
Their size, they wouldn't necessarily get smaller like we did.
Okay.
So if you believe in some of Ellen White's quotes and you also believe in the King James version of there were giants in those days, and I could tell you the story behind the use of that. So they were 15 feet tall. If they're 15 feet tall, this dinosaur would be much more manageable. Might be like a big horse, I don't know. 15 feet would take you about to the belly, undersized, maybe even a little higher of this. It's a little bit more manageable. But yeah, I don't know. But we were getting smaller, and we still are smaller, aren't we? And we age quicker. Yes.
I was wondering if you have any communication, connection, or relationship with the Institute for Creation Research.
ICR.
Yes.
I've had some contacts with him over time. Why? What's your question? They are number 2 behind Answers in Genesis.
We received the facts.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff.
The acts and facts, the magazines, and a lot of information.
Good stuff. Very good. ICR and Answers in Genesis, I depend on a lot for their information. Conservative groups, and guess what? They think we're liberal. Have you ever been considered liberal by anybody like that? I mean, as a group. So we're considered liberal. Why? Because we believe in a long age universe. They believe in a 6,000-year-old universe. And of course, we have the great controversy, and you've got to allow time for, in their version, and I kind of laugh about it a little bit, you got to make Lucifer in the morning and he's a devil by the afternoon. You got to shove everything into a very short time span. So they kind of think we've given away, we bought the long age thing from the rest of the world. For Earth, well, we believe at least 6,000 years for life. Now, there's a few that think that the empty and void, it's tohu and bohu in Hebrew. Love that term. And the earth was tohu and bohu. I don't know, it just sounds cool. So it means formless and fillless, literally. No form, no fill. And the next 3 days, God forms. And the next 3 days after that, he fills those forms. There's a real organization to God's working in creation. And then Sabbath ties it all together. So, but it says formless, tohu and bohu. In Jeremiah 4, chapter 4, describing the looks like post-second coming world. Because the cities are empty, there's no birds. It sounds terrible. It uses the same description, and the earth was tohu and bohu. But it was there. So it's not a hill worth dying on, and this is the reason why. It doesn't help us with any of our age of the earth problems, because we have age of the earth problems based on lava, and all the lava is in between fossil records and everything. We think all that happened during the flood. So it doesn't help us with if the bedrock is 4.3 billion years old, and it was when it was tohu and bohu, does that help us, Pastor? No, that's not the issue. Anyway, that's okay. Don't need it. Anybody else? Is there somebody with a microphone somewhere else? Oh, way over there. Okay, yes.
You have not mentioned anything about Dinosaur National Park in western Colorado.
Yep.
My question is, are they complete with all the diggings?
Are they complete? They consciously leave things visible for people to look at and come to the park and see what they're doing. So I don't think they're really fast or interested in removing everything from the rock. So they just kind of pick away at it, I think. So it's cool. It's beyond cool. But those are big animals. And incidentally, you know how they think they got caught? These are animals the size of school buses. Okay, and these are animals the size of school buses, and somehow the local creek got a little bit of a flash flood and caught these animals and smacked them one after the other at a neck in the creek. Bam, 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 and got caught and buried them. That was just a little local flood, you see. So these are school-sized bus animals. How in the world? Anyway, so yes. And there's somebody over there too.
You said that God created the earth in 3 days, and he formed it in 3 days. But in the Bible, it says he formed it in 1 day, and the other 5 days he was filling it up and creating other stuff.
Okay, you're close, or I kind of agree with what you're saying. Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, again, it's no biggie whether the earth was here before 6,000 years or not. In any case, there wasn't anything going on. It would be a boring place to be at. I look at Mars and I think, God, are you done with Mars? I don't know. Anyway, yes, over here.
I'm asking about time.
Yeah.
God created the world and presented the Sabbath every 7 days. How is there any way you could look at Adam and Eve living in the Garden of Eden for thousands of years before sin entered that place?
Yeah.
So would the rocks or anything else like that keep time because of the Sabbath?
Well, here's the thing. We have decay, and I mean the most conservative Christian scientists that I know of have looked at the rocks and said there is decay in rocks. And enough decay, if it were at the speed it's going now, would say millions of years. But is there a possibility that something happened as a triggering event for decay? And I personally have a view of this. In fact, so does this Christian scientist, works for the, what do you call the nuclear part of the government? What is it called? Nuclear energy? Yeah, one of those scientists that works on that. Anyway, he says this, I asked him once after a lecture, and we're all gathered around him, and everybody gets a shot at one question to this expert. So I asked him this, do you have any theory on what physically happened in the world when sin entered? And he says, yes, I think something like a shock wave went across nature. And if that's the case, notice in Romans 8, it talks about the whole creation is groaning under the corruption or the decay of sin, or caused by sin. So decay is, and the whole creation is waiting for the day that we're delivered from it. So decay is a temporary thing. And I think it's in the rocks as well. I think it's everywhere. It's certainly, I don't know if you looked in the mirror lately, no offense, but in my mirror, I see it. So we are all suffering the effects of decay. And you know what decay is caused by? I'm going to illustrate it for you. And this is hard for me because I get emotional. I can't get emotional. I'll try not to be. But I am God, and here's where sin entered the world. At that moment, they asked God, in essence, to leave. And when he did this, creation begins to fall apart. Entropy. Everything starts happening. And I think Jesus felt it because Jesus was connected with the Father. And when the Father realized that the Son was becoming sin for you and me, he stepped back and it killed Jesus. It just killed him. He did that for us. So I think that, understanding the decay in rocks, go back to Romans 8 and you'll get an answer. So, yes, maybe it would take millions of years at the rate currently, but something happened back then that caused it to immediately happen, in my opinion. Okay, anyone else? Or are you ready for dinner? Yes. You're ready for dinner? Okay, I'm going to conclude with this, all right? Is there somebody with a microphone or not? You're saying, okay, good. I'm going to conclude with this. This is my last. Thank you. 48 years in the church. This is my last public work. I want to thank you for inviting me here. I want to thank the North Pacific Union Conference for the last 10 years, allowing me to do this full-time and pursue my passion and help people understand that the biblical account is historical, reliable. You can share things with people, and you can believe in the first angel's message and tell the world with a loud voice, a loud cry. So thank you very much. If you have any interest in coming up here to take a look at that, please do, and we'll talk up here. Please stand and we'll have a closing word of prayer. Okay. Heavenly Father, thank you for your great creation of us. Thank you for the universe. Thank you for this planet. Thank you for the animals. Thank you for our families, our loved ones. And it's through all of this that we study you and realize what a great God you are. I pray, Heavenly Father, that all the people here today will be ready for the day that your Son comes to gather his friends and takes them to a place where we will see no more effects of sin, no more decay. We look forward to a world recreated with beautiful animals and plants, and where no death, no sin, no sickness, none of the terrible things of this world will reside. Heavenly Father, may that day come soon. May there be a large representation for Montana at that day. And I thank you for hearing us. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you all. Have a great rest of the Sabbath.